Tonight on The Story, the atmospheric holy grail, Aurora borealis. Headlines and hype may have you planning to head out tonight to try and catch a glimpse, but not so fast. Meteorologist Zaffino explains why this round of northern lights is likely to be a northern letdown. Plus, our investigation into ambulance response times continues.
Engine 74, AMR's level 0.
Provider American Medical Response finally sent our Evan Watson data he's been after for months.
I think this is a highly dangerous situation, and it should be unacceptable.
Evan digs into the numbers before AMR expands into Washington County in less than 3 weeks. Not one, but two mayors from cities in Oregon abruptly leave office.
He equated the Pride movement with Nazi tactics.
With social media posts at the center of the controversy.
It has created places for people to say things that they wouldn't say.
Here's The Story. I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. I have to tell you, I was one of the many people excited about the chance to see the Northern Lights tonight. I mean, we have friends who had to go all the way to Alaska to see them. So the fact that we could go just a little bit to the south, wonderful. Well, turns out not so much. The reality of this event is our big story tonight. Well, there's no doubt you saw the headlines here on TV or running rampant on social media. The Northern Lights would be visible in 17 U.S. states starting tonight. And thanks to Oregon's urban growth boundaries, it's not a stretch to think that some of us were planning to drive 20 or 30 minutes to a rural area and cut down on light pollution in order to see the Aurora borealis firsthand. But before you head out tonight, you're going to want to hear from our guy, Chief Meteorologist Zaffino, and what he has to say. And Matt, I understand it's not going to be so great, huh?
You know, this popped onto my radar screen, pun intended. I think on Sunday I started getting some emails. Hey, tell me where I should go for the Northern Lights on Thursday. And I was like, what? That was 5 days out. You never get an Aurora borealis forecast 5 days out, let alone 27 days out, which is how this whole thing started. Somebody looked at some data from the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, which is a legitimate source. They do a lot of Northern Lights research, as you might imagine, up there, and said, oh, look, in 27 days, we're going to get sunspots that are going to create the Northern Lights in 17 states, as far south as Maryland, which is farther south than Oregon, right? So I think what they did is that the sun, first of all, some solar physics for you. The sun makes a complete rotation. It rotates like the Earth does. Makes a complete rotation every 27 days. So if you look at sunspot activity disappearing and thinking, oh, that's going to re-emerge on the other side of the sun in 27 days, and you think that's going to be enough to spark the Northern Lights, not enough data to make that. That's like saying, hey, we had a rain shower in Portland today, so in 5 days there's going to be a rain shower in Chicago. I mean, it didn't work that way. Now, Northern Lights forecasting, Aurora borealis, same thing, is very, very difficult. And part of the reason is we don't have a lot of satellites measuring the sun, looking at the sun to give us data. And so, in other words, Pat, garbage in, garbage out. I mean, it's really tough to make Aurora forecast. Yeah, go ahead.
And just so people know, you're standing in front of the sun because these things are caused by huge explosions that come off of the sun?
Yes, I'm getting to that. They do.
Sorry.
So, no, it's all good. I'll get to an explanation of that, but I wanted to give you the backdrop to that forecast that got everybody so excited. So, again, the best we can do with Northern Lights, Aurora borealis forecast is, say, in 24 or 48 hours ahead of time, say, hey, we saw something like this on the Earth-facing part of the sun. And keep in mind, this is just part of the sun, and the Earth would be like that big compared to the sun. So the sun is massive, and you have to have, first of all, a solar flare or some kind of solar storm, and it's got to be facing the Earth, and it also has to hit Earth in the right way, and it also has to hit our part of Earth at night. I mean, there have been many cases where Europe gets an amazing display, but it's daylight here and we never see it. So there's a lot of input that goes into forecasting the Northern Lights or having them be visible this far south, and this is just one of them. There are a couple of indexes that help us guide that, but first, to answer your question, here's what happens. You get a solar flare or a solar storm, and it emits a bunch of plasma and electrons, and it comes in and it wraps around Earth's magnetic field, and it excites Earth's magnetic field, and they feed into the poles, both the north and the south, which is why they're far more common the farther poleward you go, to the north or the south. It has to be a really strong storm to excite Earth's magnetic field enough to make it visible this far south. So that's kind of the key on this. It really has to be a big storm to enable us to see it this far south. So it's kind of, and think of it this way too, Pat. You know, everybody's seen neon lights, right? Well, the way those work is you get particles that are moving on through those tubes, and it excites the electrons and it makes the color. Same thing with the northern lights. That's what's happening here. So that's what makes them form. Now, the thing about this is we may have some more chances coming up in the years ahead, and here's why. The sun goes through an 11-year cycle. It's called the solar cycle, where the number of sunspots gets really high and then it gets really low. And we've seen this over time. I'm just showing you a graph from 1986 through the present and to a forecast of next year in 2025 when we expect to reach another solar maximum. So we're on the upswing. We're seeing sunspot activity and solar activity increase, and those are the things that create the northern lights, and that's why we think that we'll have more opportunities in the years to come. But the solar indices and everything that we're looking at to see this for tonight, yeah, no, it's just not strong enough. So here's the bottom line. Get a good night's sleep tonight. I wouldn't bother, spending any time hunting the northern lights tonight. And they're more common anyway in the fall and in the spring around the equinoxes, the first of fall, the first of spring. But again, as I mentioned, the aurora chances will increase over the next couple of years because we are headed towards that solar maximum. All
right, so maybe we shouldn't be quite that sad because we've got more chances in the future.
I'm saying there's a chance.
All right, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Moving on now, this next story is a tale of two Oregon mayors. Both of them resigned this week, both for making bigoted social media posts. The first was Mayor Dean Sawyer. He was the mayor of Newport since 2018 until Monday of this week, that is, when he resigned. Before that, he was a cop in Newport for 30 years. And last week, Oregon Public Broadcasting reported that Sawyer had been posting homophobic, transphobic, and racist memes in a private Facebook group for law enforcement members. The second mayor is Matt Diaz. He was the mayor of Baker City out in eastern Oregon. He resigned Tuesday in a completely separate case after he posted a homophobic and anti-Semitic meme on his own Facebook page. Let's talk first about Newport's former mayor, Dean Sawyer. As I mentioned, he was revealed by OPB. It was published last Friday in their report. They found out that he'd been making bigoted posts going back years in a group with more than 39,000 followers on a site called LEO Only. That's for law enforcement only. It's a group so private that you have to show your police badge next to a newspaper with the day's date on it just to get in. OPB reports that Sawyer posted memes mocking Mexicans, transgender people, and jokes about committing violence against women going back to 2016. Well, after the article came out, Sawyer said he left the Facebook group and that his posts were just part of his online persona. According to OPB, he said it was juvenile behavior that some cops have, but it was enough for some people in Newport to quickly organize a protest.
It's so hurtful that our elected official, this is his third term, that we didn't know these things about him before, and that we just find out about them, and then he doesn't take any responsibility for it, and other than to say, oh, the argument that it was poor humor or it was juvenile, or that was one persona, but I'm really not like that. All of that is just really BS. And so what I saw and what a lot of my colleagues saw was a person who was not willing to take responsibility. So then it was like, all right, how do we get him out? What do we do? How do we mobilize? How do we organize to force him to resign?
After a weekend of protests and calls for that resignation, Sawyer did resign on Monday morning. In his resignation letter, he apologized for the posts, writing, "The posts I made and the humor I engaged in do not reflect my values. It was wrong for me to belittle people with experiences different than my own. I understand that many of you are upset, angry, and confused by my actions. You have every right to be." Now let's talk about the mayor of Baker City. Again, totally separate case, more than 400 miles away, all the way on the other side of Oregon. Matt Diaz was the mayor of Baker City until this past Tuesday. Before that, he was a Christian pastor. Last month, during LGBTQ Pride Month, he posted a meme on his personal Facebook page showing this Progress Pride flag that you see here, but 4 of them were arranged to look like a swastika. When asked about it, he wrote this on his Facebook page: that it was meant to illustrate how woke ideology is being militantly forced on American society using Nazi tactics, and that as a man of faith, he was enlisted to defend the Constitution by using tools like Facebook. We reached out to the former mayor. He did not respond, but the city council and city manager condemned his post. And just like in Newport, dozens of protesters gathered to call for his resignation, including the city councilor, Beverly Calder.
It was a horrendous post. I was offended on many levels, but I thought it did not show passion, concern, or even intelligence. But when he was asked about it, his statement was far more aggravating, because his statement went further and said that the Pride movement, he equated the Pride movement with Nazi tactics.
It took several city council meetings before Diaz resigned, and once he did not say it was because of the post. He said it was because he's moving out of town. Here's Marie Taylor, a member of the LGBTQ+ community in Baker City.
With how many queer people that are in this community, it's shocking that at least he wouldn't be more tactful, you know? It's important to understand that you represent a wide and diverse variety of people. And even though Matt Diaz is a Republican, even though he is a Christian, he still has an obligation to think of everyone, you know, not just think of people from his background, from his point of view typically.
People in Baker City we spoke with say they were disappointed that they did not at least get an apology from their former mayor the way Newport did. People in both cities also tell us that bigotry does not represent their community, and they're now focused on moving on. Up next on The Story, investigative reporter Evan Watson joins us with new data from the ambulance provider American Medical Response. He's hounded that company for months as response times and ambulance availability have suffered in Multnomah County right as the company is about to expand in Washington County. So, what they have to say about it? That's coming up next when The Story returns. Over the past few months, we've reported on the slow response times and missed standards for the ambulance company serving much of the greater Portland area, AMR. Each time, investigative reporter Evan Watson told us that he'd asked the company for an interview, and they said no. And they still won't do an interview, but now they have sent a detailed response. Let's bring in Evan Watson, who's been on top of this all year to break it down.
AMR sent me a breakdown of its issues and current and proposed solutions. The company says it's not alone. There are problems nationwide with emergency health care. Among them, a shortage of paramedics, delays at emergency departments, growing demand for mental health services, and misuse of 911. AMR currently manages EMS in Multnomah County, Clackamas County, and Clark County. Starting August 1st, it will take over ambulance service in Washington County. In Multnomah County, ambulance response times have fallen off significantly, at a rate worse than other counties. The most recent data shows AMR crews were late to respond to 1 out of every 3 emergency calls, taking longer than 8 minutes to get there. AMR blames this on Multnomah County's 2 paramedic requirement and staffing issues. The company says switching to a 1 paramedic and 1 EMT system would provide a strong solution. The county's pushed back on this. AMR says it acknowledges challenges with response times elsewhere, too. It says it's made good advancements to return to compliance in Clark County, but still, at least 850 times this year, dispatchers didn't have an available ambulance crew to send to an emergency call. The company says Clackamas County has been the least affected because of good workforce retention. All of that brings us to staffing. AMR says it's responsible for staffing problems in our region, and it's doing everything it can to hire more workers. The company is short-staffed in each county. It needs 9 paramedics and 13 EMTs in Clark County, 5 paramedics and 4 EMTs in Clackamas, and 38 paramedics in Multnomah County. AMR says it expects to be fully staffed in Washington County by the August 1st start date, but it still needs to hire 9 more paramedics there as well. So what does AMR say it's doing about all of this? To retain workers in Multnomah and Clark County, AMR says it's giving pay increases of 30% to current staff through 2025, plus paramedic scholarships. And AMR is trying out different strategies to triage 911 calls, hoping to improve response times and free up paramedic crews for serious emergencies. For example, AMR has added basic life support or BLS programs for low acuity calls in Clark and Multnomah County, sending 2 EMTs to take care of low risk situations. AMR says it has the experience and knowledge to overcome current challenges, but it's also worth noting its national parent company, Global Medical Response, currently has $4.3 billion in debt that will become due in 2025.
Evan's here now. Is there anything about this statement that surprised you?
It was interesting receiving it. I've received very short 1-sentence statements from AMR in the past few months covering this. This was the biggest and first real acknowledgement of, hey, we have issues and we're recognizing those publicly. I think the other thing fascinating with this is the look at the different counties and comparing what the service looks like there. They mentioned Clackamas County very briefly because they say they're doing pretty all right with retention, but Multnomah County, they said it's disproportionately bad compared to the other counties. So in all, there are staffing issues and need for paramedics and EMTs, and the new service starts August 1st in Washington County, like we mentioned, and they have these plans to kind of triage it out and figure that out as the second part. So you hire more people, and then you also triage the service so you can get better response and not bog down the paramedics. But this was surprising to me, just seeing them acknowledge it and send such a detailed statement saying, hey, here's where we're at, here's where we're looking to be. Now it's on us to make sure that they get where they need to be. Yeah, and even though they've been somewhat tight-lipped with us, it's obvious that on the inside, they're looking at the same issues we're seeing from the outside. So it is nice to finally hear them saying that. Thanks. Evidence of that pressure mounting to a point where, hey, we need to come out and make a statement. Yeah, I'm glad they did. Thanks, Evan, for following up on that. Appreciate it. Still to come on the story, to check receipts or not check receipts? Apparently, on that question, many of you are split. Fred Meyer has started the policy in its Portland area stores, and you have plenty to say about it. We were surprised at all your feedback in the past 24 hours. There was a lot, and we'll highlight some of your thoughts and the arguments for and against when this story returns.
Coming up at 6:30, frustration over a new income tax now on the way in one Oregon city. Why city leaders say it's a necessary, albeit an unpopular move. And imagine eating 20 miles worth of microplastic every day. It's a disturbing thought, but also the grim reality for Oregon wildlife, including whales. The startling new report on pollution off the coast. That's at 6:30.
It's that time. The annual KGW School Supply Drive starts next month, but now is the time to sign up to help us collect supplies. Level Beer in East Portland already signed up. Thanks for doing that. We appreciate it. Last year, we were able to send more than 15,000 local kids back to school with the supplies they needed. And this year, we want to help even more. To get involved, go to kgw.com/school to sign up and get your school supply drive collection kit. You know, every once in a while on The Story, we feature a topic that really gets you heated up, and your emails and voicemails just flood into our inbox for hours after the segment airs. Such was the case with our story yesterday about the legality of Fred Meyer's new policy of receipt checking on the way out of the store. They implemented it as a way to crack down on crime, and as we explained yesterday, enforcing the policy can be kind of a legal landmine. You can watch the full story right now on the KGW YouTube channel if you missed it, because it was good. But your thoughts on the policy were fairly evenly split down the middle, I'd say, both for and against. Let's start with those of you who do not have a problem with it.
In regards to the checking your receipts for groceries when you leave, I don't have a problem with it. If you're not doing anything wrong, what's the problem with showing your receipt?
And Patty wrote in, my thought is if you're not stealing, why would you be upset with someone checking your receipt? Retailers have lost so much recently because of the theft, looting, etc. If you don't want to pay for your goods, go grow your own.
I thought theft was illegal, no matter where. I think everybody has the right to look at the receipts. I'm so sick of all this. The theft, I think, is so bad.
And Christine told us, I'm from Honolulu and Walmart does this as well. We show our receipts to exit and it's no big deal. Everyone knows it's to combat crime, not take away our rights. I think this would be only a problem for the thieves and not the normal everyday shopper. Many of you agreed that you do not mind the receipt check, but you're annoyed that you have to wait in line to get it looked at after you check out. But then there were those who do not like the policy for one reason or another. A viewer named Bonnie told us that she was recently stopped on her way out of a Fred Meyer store, writing to us, I'm 86 years old and walk with a cane. The idea that I could get away with shoplifting anything is rather ludicrous. I did, of course, comply, but it's a very uncomfortable feeling that someone would think I'm a thief. I'm going back to ordering online and picking up my groceries. Here's hoping they don't decide to frisk me before loading groceries into my car. All right. Nancy had a similar thought. I feel if an employee asks to see my receipt, they are tactically accusing me of shoplifting. I refuse to show it as I have done nothing wrong and do not feel I have to prove my innocence.
I went to Meyer today and they asked to check my receipt, and I thought that was crazy. I totally don't agree with it. I guess I'll be shopping at New Seasons now.
Thousands of people have watched our story on the KGW YouTube channel, with this person commenting over there, "I won't spend money in a place that treats me like a criminal."
I no longer comply with showing a receipt for merchandise I paid for. I feel like it's an infringement of my personal space, my personal rights, and a law-abiding citizen who pays for my merchandise. So I'm unsettled that Fred Meyer is now implementing this policy.
Another common thread through many of your comments had to do with the self-checkout lanes, with many of you saying they should go back to hiring actual cashiers, which would help alleviate some of the shoplifting. A nice idea to be sure, but it certainly feels like maybe that ship has sailed. As always, thanks for taking the time to write to us or calling and leaving a voicemail. We do read all of your emails and listen to every single message, so keep them coming in. In the meantime, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. In the meantime, stick around for the news at 6:30. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.